Today's expert is Nikki Kenward. Nikki is a UK up-ledger craniosacral therapist with over 20 years experience, specializing in gut health, pediatrics, PTSD, and trauma. She's an international educator with 15 years experience as a certified international healthcare educator. Additionally, Nikki is an author and poet. Nikki, this is so exciting for me. I love craniosacral, and the work that you guys are doing is so important, and a lot of people don't even know what it is. So first, I just wanted to ask how you're doing.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be here to talk to you and meet you, Sarah. And yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. And I just love any opportunity to make people more aware of the work, the craniosacral work, and how we can help.
So what exactly is craniosacral for someone that has never even heard of that before?
Well, so craniosacral therapy's roots are in osteopathy. So it's a form of hands-on body work, but it's very gentle, intelligent, listening touch, and it creates a really safe space for that person whilst working delicately to listen to the tissues of the central nervous system, the dural membrane system around the brain and spinal cord, the fascia in the body, to offer the body an opportunity to release patterns of tension and strain and to function better. That was a bit of a long answer.
No, it was to the point though. And how did you get led to this work with craniosacral in your own life?
Well, that's strange, really, because I'm usually a bit of a planner. I'll have a piece of paper and I'll put pros and cons of something. But actually, I was a dance therapist at the time. My background's in dance. And I saw an advert for up-ledger craniosacral therapy on the back of a magazine. And I had never had a session. But as a dancer, I guess I was always interested, and as a dance therapist, in the body and how the body and mind work together. So I just booked on the first module, just like that. And I went along and fell in love with it. And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Now, if it's like anyone's first time getting into, like they want to actually go and see a therapist, what's something you advise them to look for?
It depends. What do you mean, a craniosacral therapist?
Yeah.
Well, go along to the upledger.com site, look up, find a therapist, but also then see what modules they've taken, make sure they're qualified, obviously, a lot of qualified therapists there. But if you're really interested in something to do with your immune system, there are therapists who've done all the immune options. So we have a core curriculum, but we have a really big specialist curriculum in different areas. Or if you're wanting to take your baby or a child, then you would look for somebody who's pediatric qualified, etc. Yeah.
That's amazing. The work that it takes, how many months or years does it take to actually become a certified specialist in craniosacral?
If you want to get the kind of basic qualification, which is technique certification, you do about 5 central modules. Most people take about 3 years to do that. And then they often repeat the first couple of modules before they do all the exam. So the exam is written and practical. There's different parts of it. But then after that, of course, we all keep going because that's just the basic. And then you can go and do pediatric curriculum, immune curriculum, glial cell curriculum, my curriculum on the gut. There are many other ways of increasing your knowledge and expanding what you can do.
Let's dive a little deeper into the gut because, as you know, the gut and the brain are they're connected, interconnected. Yeah. How have you found in your own life this has impacted your gut health doing craniosacral?
Huge. I mean, my gut health has been an issue my whole life, from difficulties in childhood. And then more recently, well, about 20 years ago now, I had a scuba diving accident, which gave me post-traumatic stress disorder. That had a huge impact on my gut. So that's my own journey was part of the reason I wanted to develop craniosacral work, to include working on the gut, on the nervous system in the gut. So before that, craniosacral work had helped me tremendously in my life deal with earlier challenges. But I always felt there was a piece missing, that I couldn't quite get to what was happening in my gut, and that of a lot of clients coming to me in my clinic who had chronic digestive stuff going on. And it just seemed to be hard to get a hold of. It's like there was a piece of the puzzle missing. And of course, there's the whole second brain, the brain-gut connection. But also, we know now the enteric nervous system, often called the second brain, can make its own mind up about things. It doesn't have to talk to the brain in the head. And that's become scientifically shown to be the case. So it becomes a very complicated situation, and one where I felt it was really important to develop our work so that our therapists could help people with these chronic problems and work directly with the latest research and on the tissues of the gut.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask, the how. The how part can be very confusing to a lot of people. How to incorporate this. Not only are they going to work on their own with nutrition, but then coming to you, how can they kind of, and there's no quick fixes, but how can they help you as a therapist along this journey as a participant or or even as a student of trying to get into a healthier state of being?
Do you mean if somebody's coming to me in my clinic as a patient?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So they will often work with a nutritional therapist alongside working with me, because obviously that's really important, what we put in our mouth and what goes through the long tube being from the mouth to the anus. But unless we also deal with all the challenges and experiences we've had in life from probably in utero onwards, which will create their own issues in strain and tension patterns in the tissues of the small and large intestine, will create issues in cell populations there, and all this we know now, will create problems with an unhelpful default setting, perhaps in part of the enteric nervous system. Unless we deal with those, it doesn't matter how many avocados you eat, and I love them, you're only going to be able to go so far on your journey to being more comfortable. It's fundamental to everything else. And the two things often go alongside. We need the good nutritional help to support our gut, heal the gut, and we need to deal with the deeper issues that are held in the tissues of the gut in order for the gut to function better and use the good food that we're eating.
Now, when someone is actually in a session with you, what's the first thing that happens? What's the first thing you guys do with that patient?
Okay. So generally for craniosacral, it's quite funny really. We take a very full consultation and then we do our best to forget about it immediately, which is what our ledger taught us, which isn't as awful as it sounds. Because what we want to do when we put our hands on someone, on the body, is to be very present with how they are in that moment. Dr. Upledger always said the most powerful space to be in is the space of not knowing. If you put your hands on thinking, aha, this person has come with a frozen left shoulder, so I'm going to probably need to work on this, this, and this, then you're not really going to be able to listen to what that particular body is showing you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing you do is to clear your mind, become very grounded, blend with the person with your hands, probably starting with their feet, be in a very neutral space, and just listen and see what you can learn about that person that day with you as an individual therapist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
really about presence for you as the therapist.
It's hugely about presence and meeting somebody where they are without an agenda. So
Mm-hmm.
you will have the knowledge of the anatomy and physiology in your head, in your hands. You will have a whole host of techniques you can use, but you don't come to that person with an agenda, bad knee, I'm going to do A, B, D, and F.
Mm-hmm.
Because for that person, you may need to do D, E, G, and L,
Mm-hmm.
whatever those techniques are, and you won't know if you've decided already what they need.
Has anyone ever compared this to, because someone once brought this up to me, a client, and I was trying to explain, but because I'm not a professional, the perfect
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to ask you,
Yeah.
is there, is Reiki and craniosacral into major different categories, or
Mm.
do they intermingle in some way?
That's really good thing to bring up because people ask me that as well. So I am, in fact, a Reiki master, but I don't really use it. I think there are many differences. So you can become a Reiki master in 3 weekends without any knowledge of anatomy and physiology at all. So I'm not dissing Reiki. It's great. It's got its place, but it's very limited.
Mm.
Whereas to become a craniosacral therapist, you have to have a really thorough knowledge of the anatomy and physiology of the craniosacral system, the head, neck, and spine. And you have to be able to spend at least 3 years getting the most basic qualification.
Mm.
So it can feel similar to some people because it's light touch. You're
Mm.
not pushing and pulling. If you're a chiropractor, you might manipulate. People will hear the changes in their body, and that's great. But then a chiropractor's intention is to line up the bones of the spine, right? That's
Okay.
fine. If you're a masseur, somebody's going to feel you really working on the knots in your muscles to get rid of them. So there'll be often a much firmer touch. And we're not doing either of those things. We're working with the fascia, the nervous system, with fluids, the dural membrane. They will only respond to a gentle touch. So that's why it can be confusing sometimes on the face of it with Reiki. But the other really big difference is that we are very neutral when we put our hands on. So Reiki, you would often put your hands on with an intention of putting energy into that person. And we wouldn't do that because we want to learn what is happening with that person and give that person the space to show us what they need that day and what's going on. So
Mm.
it may involve some energy work at some point, or it may not. But we're not going to make that decision. We're going to be in the place of listening to the tissues and then responding to that. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's interesting to thank you also for putting in the chiropractor as well as the masseuse, because that's
Mm,
also very different too. And it's good
yeah,
for people to know it's more about the cranial, the neck, and the spine, like you
mm,
said. And I just wanted to emphasize that again for anyone that might have missed that, because it's so important that we understand that there's so many different parts and we can go to all these
yes,
different resources. But what comes
yeah,
down to is with you guys, you're really focusing on staying present with the body and working through the tissues and what's going on in
yeah,
those three places.
absolutely. And it's interesting, the reason we are very light in our touch is because of the anatomy of the fascia. So I don't know if you, Sarah, have ever mixed up corn flour and water.
No.
There's something you can do later on for fun. So mix up corn flour and water in a bowl, and you get this kind of weird fluid liquid thing. And if you prod it really hard, like I'm hitting my desk, it will feel really hard. But if you put your finger in gently moving it, it will flow. So that's a non-Newtonian liquid. It's thixotropic, two great expressions. But they are the same as the way the collagen in the fascia and the nervous system responds to touch.
Mm.
So if we came in like a masseuse, trying to get rid of a knot, or a chiropractor adjusting a bone in the neck or spine, the fascia would not respond to us. It would kind of go rigid.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really good reason why we're light and gentle.
Interesting. Now, besides all of the amazing work you're doing, you're also an educator in the theater space, a poet, and an author.
Yeah.
How do you make all this time to explore these different areas?
Yeah, good question. Well, I don't do them all at the same time. But I'm still in clinic 2 days a week, but I have space other days to do other things. So if I'm working on a theatre project, then I will devote more time to that.
Mhm.
You know, if I was recently editing the second edition of my book with Inner Traditions, the publisher, well, last autumn. And so then I had to devote more time to that. So I just do my best to space things out and give myself the time for that thing. So sometimes my time management works really well and sometimes not so well.
Yeah, just is life, right?
Yeah, I know. But I love the variety. I wouldn't be any good at doing one thing all the time. I'd be bored.
Me too. And I
Mm.
always talk about that with especially my corporate clients, how important it is to have things outside of work that really
Yeah.
light you up because you're going to find too all of that gut brain connection. You're going
Mhm.
to find a lot of the problems relief if you bread expands your knowledge and just let some things go. Don't worry about
Mm.
all the future that we have to feel like we have to get right now and capture.
Mm.
We can just try new things.
I think that's really important. And in fact, when I talk about gut health when I'm educating people and in my book, a lot of it is about obviously addressing the deeper stresses held in the tissue, but also looking at your life and what you're doing to nourish yourself, what resources you're building for those times of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And those things are really important for your gut health, just as much, obviously, as for everything. And your gut health is a big part of your mental health.
Yes. Yeah. They go hand in
So,
hand.
yeah, totally.
So kind of going off of stress, how has stress saved your life?
How has stress saved my life? I guess the body's response to stress when I was drowning was probably a lifesaver.
Yeah, definitely.
When I was at that point where I just started to, because in the end, you do breathe in water. You can't hold your breath forever. It's not possible. And I was 60 foot under. So I did have to breathe. Water came here, but then what my body did as a stress response was go into laryngospasm. So larynx and everything went into spasm. And that actually saved my life. Because if it hadn't, the water would have gone all the way into my lungs. And then, there'd have been nothing else for me in this world.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's a really interesting thing to ask.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes the body has to respond in that way to save our lives.
It's incredible. Yeah, because we all just look at stress sometimes as, well, the stress causes me pain, but it also is life-changing and can save you if you absolutely need it. Like in that
Yeah.
situation, how were you able to then take all because we know that trauma stays caught in the places where
Mm.
the stress happens. How are you able to reduce that over the years?
So I had a lot of craniosacral work from my colleagues, as you can imagine, which was really helpful. A lot of mouth work all around my head, my neck from that, my lungs, my heart. The other thing I did was I took up yoga and had to learn to breathe again, really. And by doing that over 3 years, I was able to come off all my medication for the arrhythmias I'd
Developed. Yeah.
got from the accident. So my heart structure was fine, but I had different arrhythmias, which were really unpleasant. But I didn't like taking the medication, so I came off it over 3 years by learning to breathe and having the cranial work and doing yoga. So it's a gradual process. And I think one of the most helpful things anyone said to me about recovering from a trauma, which I've always remembered and passed on to people, it was actually the lovely cardiologist who supported me coming off all the drug. And he said, don't try and be the person you were before the accident. Be curious about who you're going to be now.
Mm.
And I cannot tell you what a relief that was. And I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was. I was trying to go back to who I was and what I did before. And as soon as I was able to let go of that and focus on the process of post-traumatic growth, which for me is the huge thing for myself and others, then I was able to be curious about where my life was going. And of course, it started to go off in a rather different way.
Wow. That's incredible. What a journey. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's vulnerable. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Where can people find your book and then also work with you and study under you? Sorry, and study under you.
Yeah. So people can find my book on upledger.com and also on amazon.com. It's in most of the big bookshops, I think, Simon and Schuster, Barnes and Noble. But Amazon is probably people's go-to, isn't it?
It seems legit these days.
Right now, for everything.
Everything. All over the world.
Yeah, it's crazy. But we love it too, right?
Yeah.
So people can also study my gut work with me through upledger.com, but they would need to have done most of the core curriculum first, because in order to do my class, it's one of the more upper level classes. And we assume that they will by then have the knowledge of the anatomy and physiology of the craniosacral system in their hands, and also have done some of the classes on our somato-emotional release work, how we can help people explore emotions that quite naturally might come up during a session safely, because that happens such a lot with the gut work. These deeper emotional stories and trauma are often found there. And so we need people to be able to support the person if this comes about. So they can do that, and then they can come and do my class.
Awesome. And is there a way that they can connect with you if they have any questions? What's the best way to reach you?
Absolutely. Yes, I'd be delighted. So they can email me, and my email is Nikki, Nikki, .cranio, no surprises there, CRANIO @gmail.com. And I'm always really happy to hear how people found the book, any questions, anything. It's great to have a conversation and expand the thinking and the work.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation today. I know it will open up people's minds and get them on Upledger to start discovering what craniosacral can do for them, either as a student or a patient. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been lovely talking to you. And I wish you very, very well.
Thank you. Now, everyone, make sure you share your takeaways. You can make sure to rate, comment, all of it. And as always, remember that you are on a self-love journey. So be kind to yourself throughout the process. Have a beautiful day. Until next week, take care.